something, but first, say something. What was it? My head's not getting any.
Well, your earpiece and everything wasn't functioning to the high level. I was just saying your head didn't get any bigger.
I know, but for some reason it's not fitting today. But everyone in the control room, I can hear them, and they're telling me to move on, so I'm going to do that.
It's
Good morning.
Not an earpiece problem, Jenna.
How's it going? Take a sip of coffee.
Same size every day.
Every day. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. How you doing, Sissy?
Very good.
This right here is Nick Wright. Yeah, this one's not working. We got a big show today. Giannis and the Bucks got the best of Harden and the Rockets. Dallas Cowboys are at an impasse with one of their biggest stars, but we start with some changes in the NFL rulebook. All right, maybe not unrecognizable changes, but big enough to make headlines today. NFL owners approved a new rule that will make both offensive and defensive pass interferences calls reviewable. Coaches will be able to challenge calls and missed calls. The impetus for this change came after the missed pass interference call in the Saints-Rams NFC title game last year. If you're worried it'll make the games longer, it is only a one-year proposal, so don't worry too much. See, what was your reaction to all of this yesterday?
Well, my initial reaction goes back to when they made the call. I knew that the NFL office, because especially games that are like that in prime time, this is a game potentially where stopping the Saints from going to the Super Bowl. We don't know that. They probably had first and goal at the 5-yard line. It definitely enhances their chances. But when you have replay, you want to try to get it right as many times as possible. And there's too many fans that that the game is dependent on them to continue watching the game. So the last couple of times they've changed rules, being with the catch and a couple other rules. This one, it's based on what the fans want. But what I like about this one was this was driven by the competition committee, Sean Payton being one of those coaches, Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Jason Garrett. Those are the coaches that wanted this change also. So I don't want the NFL to be at the mercy of their consumer, that being the fan. Yes, we want the fan to understand the game, but it's important that the people that are playing the game and people that are coaching the game, they understand the new. So I do like it from their standpoint because the coaches wanted this. Now you can get it right, not perfect. What's the old saying? Don't worry about hitting perfect on the way to better. Because this is better than what we had. I like the fact that it's a trial. They did this in the CFL as far as being able to review these types of plays. They didn't ultimately end up keeping it, but they did try it out. I believe, though, just like most of the other rules, it's a huge advantage to the offense, which most of the rule changes because, I mean, the defense, pass routes, this is not only going to challenge where the ball is, but if I run a pass route that's 20 yards, 30 yards down, I got the eye in the sky watching this guy the whole way. So it might not be when the ball's in the air, but I also have ability. Did he grab me? Did he clutch me at the top of the route? Did he stop my momentum? Did he go inside the cylinder of my body? Did I have a right to that space? I just believe that as you go along, you'll see it's a huge advantage for the offense again.
Well, and you mentioned the fans. I will make a prediction here. I think that the fans are going to hate this rule change by week 5 or 6. Because what you now have is take one of the defining plays of not the NFC Championship game, an obvious, egregious missed call that is remembered because it is such an outlier amongst missed calls. Take the end of the Super Bowl. The play before the Stephon Gilmore interception. The great pass breakup on Brandon Cooks. This play right there. They used this play as evidence as something that would be reviewed and called pass interference. In real time, that is a great defensive play. And if you can't do that in the NFL, I don't know how you play pass defense in the NFL. The fact that they spot shadowed or highlighted this play as, yes, if you threw a challenge flag on this play, Sean McVay, under the new rules, we would change it to pass interference. That's the new NFL. And whether the fans' opinion should be taken into account or not is up for debate. But I will tell you, the fans will not like that. And one thing that I didn't hear people discussing, at least in large part since this rule came out, is what about Hail Marys? There is simply an understood acceptance that Hail Marys, it has to be egregious.
Yeah, I think the players will adjust to that one very easy. Because when you implement your Hail Mary defense, you implement that knowing that the rule changes are there.
So you think, I just want to make sure I understand, you think it's not that they will keep almost the gentleman's agreement as far as how they apply pass interference to Hail Marys. You don't think that will stay the same. What you think is, since the rules they're going to be able to review it, the players will change the way they do it?
I mean, every year we have rules that are points of emphasis. We have a list of things that we do in adjusting to what the current season. Earlier in the season, we know they're going to err on the side of throwing more flags, having more reviews. But when you implement the Hail Mary, now you'll know, based on what the rule is, listen, guys, when the ball is on its way down, they're not going to let you just jostle and do those things. So that right there is easy to correct because it's very, very predictable. You know the time in the game. You know it's going to happen. But typically a Hail Mary, it happens at the end anyway where you could review it already. So now that these plays will be in scope, I think that's an easy teaching tool for the defenders to be able to adjust compared to how do I guard this guy? How do I not grab him, which I typically were doing during the route compared to at the end of it, where now you review that play and now they're going to call it. So I think it just becomes more and more difficult for a defender in the NFL.
All right, so I heard what both of you had to say. Nick, I'll ask you, does this help then or hurt the integrity of the game?
Well, I guess it depends on your definition of the word integrity. We hear in replay, with replay across all sports, we hear nothing is more important than getting it right. And I would argue on the play, obviously this play was horribly wrong. And it was an outlier play. It was maybe the worst missed call in the NFL all season. And typically in life, I don't like to change rules or change the way we do things because of a 1 in 1,000 play. But the play in the Super Bowl that we showed is not a 1 in 1,000 play. And for the majority of NFL history, this play is great defense. Is it getting it right that is now pass interference? So is it getting it right because according to the letter of the law, that's always been pass interference, but according to the way the game has been officiated, that has been called good defense?
Yeah, I believe the players will adjust to it. The NFL does a great job of implementing the new rules and teaching the players. It's no different than they went for targeting when that rule changed. Now, there was a few outlaws in the league, and I mean, they were outlawed. Forget what the law is. So we're still going to be taking people's head off. But the learning and what they taught players have adjusted to it. So you see it less and less involved in the game. The NFL is a passing game. Last year, 237 pass interference penalties called, and now you add the potential that I can review it. I mean, and now these other types of plays, so it becomes more and more. As far as the integrity of the game, to answer that question, the fan feels better at the end of the day if they feel like you can utilize all the tools, and that's what replay is. It's not going to be perfect. Does it make the game better? Because, yes, now you go into the game, you have more tools that be like, okay, there's less probability of missing calls compared to now. It's just like the wins and losses at the casino. What fans are going to remember is when it's against their team. They won't remember when it did benefit their team. But I think the integrity of the game, looking at this call, the reaction to it, I think that integrity of the game, you get a more satisfactory, I'm more satisfied with the product because of this option.
But, Nick, does this become a slippery slope then? They do it on holding calls. They do it on this. They do it on that. Is it just the start of what could be a number of
I think the more we implement replay, eventually more things become reviewable. I'm not so worried about the slippery slope part of it because we can deal with the this and the here and now. Right now, we know that the league office or the NFL owners and the competition committee were against a lot of changes that would be the slippery slope variety. So I think the NFL is a conservative enough league that we're not going to see systemic change overnight. But I also think every team in the league, once the league meetings are over, needs to, GM, coach, owner, if they want to get involved, it is imperative that you have, and I don't know if it's a new staff member or a new focus on, it is going to be critical who is watching your replays to tell your coach they missed it challenge. That is an even bigger part of the game now as far as your support staff for your head coach on Sunday.
I don't think you need to go outside the coaching staff. You can go to the coaching staff that's not on the field. Your offense is on the field, defensive staff led by the defensive coordinator. They've pretty much made their adjustments as far as what they're going to do the next series. They should be watching it. Trying to bring someone outside of that sanctity of the football coach, I don't think that's going to happen. But also, just slow down just a little bit. Last year, we we had the roughing the passer. First quarter of the season, man, I can't believe we're calling this. Man, we can't believe. When you start getting to the playoffs in the Super Bowl, what ended up happening? They end up starting venturing back. So now, typically, there's always an adjustment period. I believe the players will adjust. Fans will adjust, but the game is better today because you have this power to be able to go to something earlier in the game, not in that 2 minutes, to be able to get it right.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, it's been 2 days. Is Rob Gronkowski already planning his return to the NFL? That is next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We'll get to Gronk in a second, but first, a couple plays from last night. Bulls and Raptors. Kyle Lowry between the legs to OG Anunoby for the lay-in.
All right, let me see this again here. Oh, in transition.
Now, that time he was trying, too.
Yeah.
He was trying to go between the legs.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that was slick.
In real time, I didn't understand what he had done. I didn't see it. I thought it was a regular bounce pass.
Man.
Right, and his stats don't do him justice.
If Kawhi Leonard stays in Toronto,
he'll be a big reason why.
Yes.
Rockets and Bucks.
No!
Chris Paul makes DJ Wilson stumble before knocking down the three.
Not many Rockets highlights, but this was definitely there.
Oh, this is better than what the Harden Wes Johnson last year. This is off the screen, off the court.
Yeah, he was going to. He's a big-time defender. Chris Paul just a little too small.
He turned him into a weak side defender on a play where he was guarding the ball handler. He didn't even, he was like, nah, screw it, man. I ain't going back out there.
All right, Magic Heat. Derek Jones Jr. knows exactly what to do with the pass.
Again?
Boom.
Is anybody else watching this? Man, move out the lane when my man is coming through. Stretch Armstrong.
Oh,
go
gadget arms.
Oh, get it in there, Nick. You invented that.
Go gadget arms. I did invent. Well, I invented that in the sports context.
Before you were
After
born.
Danielle
Inspector Gadget, yeah, petting the cat, Mr. Claw, the whole nine. Listen, this was a huge win for Orlando. Huge win. They spoiled Chris Bosh, his jersey retirement, the whole thing.
Oh, this.
Lance.
Wizards, Lakers, Lance Stevenson puts Jeff Green on skates, and the Lakers bench likes it a lot.
Oh, no.
Now, to me, this was not one of the better moves I've ever seen. Now, the Lakers, they don't have much to cheer about.
They don't.
But, Jenny, you have to watch his right foot. He steps on Jeff Green. He steps on his foot. That's the reason why Jeff Green's stumbling. Now, the Lakers, they don't have a whole bunch to cheer about. Lance bringing him over in Rondo, that was not a solution. So as they go off, as Charles Barkley say, going fishing or golfing or whatever people do in the offseason, let them have their little cheer and everything because not many highlights this season, Lakers.
And another back-to-back terrible wins for the Lakers. I mean, they win when it don't matter, when they shouldn't be winning. What's happening?
All right, let's move on to Rob Gronkowski. He retired over the weekend after 9 years in the league, but it's one of those retirements with a little bitty asterisk next to it. That's because his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, left the door open for Gronk to return later in the season. And to add more intrigue, the NFL posted this graphic showing Gronk having the most touchdown catches from Tom Brady. Brady commented, quote, "I hope 78 isn't the final number." Hey, look. We saw this happen with Jason Winnett. We saw what happened with our guy, Chris Carter. See, how would coming back be? What would a return be like for Gronk?
Well, first you need to know every player's situation is totally different. At the time I left the Vikings, I voided my contract, and I did hit free agency, but there was a great potential that I would probably retire. HBO at the time offered me, man, a 5-year deal to be able to be on TV, a no-cut contract. It was guaranteed, and I was like, man, so run up and down the field. Now I can transition to the career that I thought that I was going to have. Now, the St. Louis Rams, Mike Marks at that time, they had a tremendous interest in me. I thought I was going to go there, be a slot receiver, red zone receiver, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, all of us. The greatest show on turf was going to be able to add a slot receiver to them. So we thought it was a great fit. It didn't work out. I ended up accepting the television gig. So halfway through the season, the Dolphins are in a big Monday night game in Denver. They get 2 of their top receivers banged up, knocked out of the game. Rick Spielman, a friend of mine, played ball with his brother Cris, been knowing me since I was a kid. He called me up. I was in New York in my hotel, down at the Central Park at the Ritz, and I was chilling. I was like, he's like, hey, Chris. I was like, man, you called me to play football? He's like, no, I just called to see how you're doing. Eventually, the conversation proceeded to be, would you like to come back? Do you think you can help us? And I had been working out. A lot of players come back. I don't believe Gronk is going to have the energy to be able to come back because the reason why Gronk is leaving is because he's banged up. I wasn't leaving because I was banged up. I was leaving because the Vikings' chance to win the Super Bowl, that window was done. Denny Green had left the team. He had been fired. And I didn't think we had to stay around to win. Gronk's already won. Gronk said he already made a lot of money. So what's he going to be coming back for? So for me, I would just be careful. There's a reason why he's retiring. I know one thing, the New England Patriots, they won't be thinking about him coming back. Tom Brady can tweet, Instagram, do whatever he wants. But how they proceed, I wouldn't be surprised in the top 4 rounds if they didn't draft 2 tight ends. Like, they're going to move on from a football standpoint.
Because they lost both their tight ends, by the way. Dwayne Allen's gone as well. Now, he's not near the player Gronk was, but they had a need there, arguably, even before Gronk retired. But I've heard a lot of people say, that Gronk will, by October, feel better than he has felt since high school, in any point in his adult life, that his body will be in better shape, that he will feel in better condition.
Yeah, those aren't football players saying that. You're listening to some other people. Football players won't be saying that.
So he'll feel better as a citizen, as a civilian.
Let me tell you something. The arthritis he has in his knee, he's fractured his forearm a couple times. When you start getting arthritis, it don't go away. It gets worse. So the things that he's had a problem with, he's had a chronic back problem for at least 10 years. That's one of the reasons why he wasn't a first-round draft pick. So to think his back has gotten better over those 10 years, no. There's a reason why he wears all that protective gear on his left forearm.
No, the point that I'm bringing up that we talked about before the show is that he will, and as Bart Scott has talked about, his body will start to heal up.
Well,
and
the inflammation goes down.
And it might make him feel better walking around day to day. But the point you had made was that doesn't mean he's ready to play football. That even if his body does feel better, so say the arthritis doesn't get better, but he's not going to be taking hits over September and October the way he would in a football season. He won't have additional injuries that he doesn't have right now. But in your eyes, that doesn't make him better equipped to play football because he's not doing the requisite training that is necessary to play in an NFL
Gronk
game.
is a workout warrior. But the type of workouts that you're doing, I know Jenna thinks she trains hard, but she can't train to be in the NFL. And the overall mentality, what it takes to get up in the morning and what you have to do to get your mind. People talk about your body. It's your brain that you have to convince that, you know something? I had a huge advantage in the NFL. Number one is the reason how I can catch the ball. But the other reason was my edge was the fear of going across the middle and being hit. I didn't have that like other people had. All right? So you have to get your mind to say, I have to do this. So that type of work, it's more than just your body. So when you turn that off, regardless, even if you go to the gym, you don't come to the gym where I'm getting ready for an NFL season. So regardless of what kind of cardio shape you're in, you're not in the mental shape of an NFL player. I hope that makes sense.
No, that's what I was trying to lead
We hear a lot about this with NBA players. They leave the game, but the game doesn't leave them, so they always they want to come back, they want to play as long as possible. I know it's a far more dangerous game when you play football, but give me a reason, to your point, see, why a football player would want to return to the game after winning when your body's already beaten up and broken down.
Because you'll never be in that type of atmosphere. He'll never have the type of job that he has right now with the demographics, the different type of people, where they come from, but the goal to try to win. You got 16 games, you're trying to win them together. You're trying to do it as a team. And the time you spend traveling, meeting, in the locker room, that time is, there's no time like that. There's no better time that you'll have. You think you have fun in college? It is nothing till you get a bunch of guys that all you have to do is concentrate on football. Typically, everyone has got the most money they've ever had in their life, so the freedom that you have and just that togetherness. That's what guys miss, and then they miss Sundays. The reason why they quit is because they can't get through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So, yes, they miss the locker room. Yes, they miss game days. Yes, some of them do miss those huge NFL checks. But it's a rare, rare time, and you have to be able to put that behind you because you'll never have a job or anything that will rival being an NFL player.
And there's obviously been a lot of guys who, or at least a handful of really notable guys, who have sat out an entire season and come back. Reggie White sat out a whole year, came back with the Carolina Panthers. Deion sat out 3 years and came back for 2 full years. Ricky Williams sat out a year and came back. Marshawn Lynch sat out a full year. The distinction there and what we're talking about with Gronk is Those guys sat out a year and then came back and had the offseason to prepare themselves for what Cris is talking about. Chris's circumstance was different in that he came back midseason, and a player who had been injured once your entire career got injured 4 games into your comeback, or a lacerated kidney or a lacerated spleen, something awful. Like the NFL guy that tries to come back midseason, if you remember even Jason Witten, he was offered midseason. Turned it down, came back, is now coming back with an offseason to prepare
The biggest
himself.
difference in the NBA and the NFL, in the NBA you can specialize. And you don't have to worry about getting hurt. You don't have to worry about, because you can't move as quick, that someone else is going to get hurt. NBA you can specialize. I'm a three-point shooter. I'm a defensive specialist. I'm a big who runs the court. You can specialize. I can hide you as the 11th, 12th man on that bench in the NBA. I can do that. NFL, you can't hide an old man. It's a young man's game, and it's a game of speed, power, and force. And when you get old, you can generate less of those things. There's nowhere on the field to be able to hide someone like Gronk.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, did Giannis prove he can take down the Warriors in the finals? We'll talk about that next on First Things First. April 4th, the countdown to the Cup continues on FS1 as Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe lead the U.S. women's national team against fellow World Cup contender Australia. Catch all the action on FS1 and the Fox Sports app. All right, time for us to go viral. Last night, Chris Bosh's number was retired by the Miami Heat. It was a memorable night for the 11-time All-Star and 2-time champion. Take a listen to this hilarious story Bosh told.
A lot of people don't know this, but Pat first met me when I was a scrawny 19-year-old kid fresh out of Hutchins, Texas. And unfortunately for him, he had the 5th pick, and I went at 4, so he had to settle for this kid named D. Wade. And D, I gotta tell you, man, you know, sorry about beating you to this jersey retirement thing. I had to beat you at something, dude.
Bosh, one of the best guys in the NBA or around the NBA. And what you said there, I think people forget, 11-time All-Star, how good he was in Toronto before
11
he got
straight.
Yeah. Before he got to Miami, like he had a team where his second best player was Jarrett Jack. He never had the supporting cast around him, but he was outstanding, and then took a third-tier role when he got to the Heat to help them win titles.
He sacrificed more of his game than Dwayne Wade did or LeBron in that. They don't win those 2 championships if he doesn't develop a deep outside, even a three-point shot that became very, very effective in those last couple years he was there in Miami. But a great teammate. No team does it better, too, as far as taking care of their former players than the Miami Heat.
100%. And when you say he developed the outside shot, also he was one of the keys that unlocked those great Heat defenses that helped them win those championships, because he could switch on everybody. Underrated player. Great, great player.
All right, time now for some stories to start your morning. Brought to you by the unexpected energy of ExxonMobil. So NFL owners approved a new rule that will make both offensive and defensive pass interference calls reviewable. See, what'd you make of this?
I thought they did the right thing. It gained a lot of momentum through the competition committee, which, guys, I really respect. Sean Payton is on that committee. Belichick, Andy Reid, and others. They helped change this. Didn't look like it was going to happen. I thought that there would be a lot of attention around it, but an actual rule change where they're going to experiment with it, still huge advantage for the offense, like most of the other rule changes.
I think it's an overreaction to a terrible missed call. If they were going to change anything, I thought Mike Pereira's idea of having an official be able to buzz down from the booth on particularly egregious plays was the best way to go about it. I'm also very curious what this is going to mean for Hail Marys at the end of games and the unspoken rule of, we're going to let them play a little bit on Hail Marys. Fans were clamoring for this. I think fans might be clamoring for how it used to be by about week 5 or 6 next year.
All right, let's move on to the Raiders. Jon Gruden finally admitting how difficult the Khalil Mack trade was for him. He said he cried for 3 days after the deal. Nick, what was the last thing that made you cry for 3 days? What was your reaction to this?
I mean, Gruden continues to play the character of Jon Gruden, the Raiders coach, to a perfect T. He also said without this trade, we wouldn't have been able to sign Trent Brown, trade for AB, get LaMarcus Joyner. Say more of those things. Talk more about, hey, can't grade the trade. We haven't even used the draft picks yet. But the crying for 3 days stuff, the histrionics, that is not helping Jon Gruden's case as he's trying to turn the the Raiders around and turn around what was a bad first year for John Gruden publicly?
Lies, lies, nothing but lies. You were in full control of the situation. And how much communication did you have with Khalil Mack? To know that I'm going to be crying for 3 days, or maybe you could have changed that fortune because, remember, you didn't communicate with him. Never met with him face-to-face.
Right.
Stop, Gruden. Stop. I see through it. I'm just glad we're getting all these little sound bites so America kind of sees what the Raiders are doing.
Maybe it's not a lie. Maybe it was the 3 days, the 3 Sundays that he saw Khalil Mack play for the first time. It's like a strip sack. Wait, another strip sack? Wait, another strip sack?
Yeah, it might have been a combination, too, of trading Amari Cooper, and he was getting 100-yard games with the Cowboys.
All right, to the Giants now. According to a report, the team will explore a trade for quarterback Josh Rosen. Rosen could be the odd man out in Arizona, with speculation that the Cardinals will draft Kyler Murray with their first overall pick. See, would this be a good move for New York?
Absolutely. They better get ahead of the Giants. Better get ahead of the Redskins because they're not
better get ahead of the Patriots.
The Patriots, yes, because I mean, these other teams are thinking about this also. Josh Rosen, it's one of the best deals out there available. You got him at a fixed cost. You got a first-round potential talent compared to what Gettleman said. Oh, you know, when we traded for Peppers, we felt like, you know, we got a number one, and then we got a player who was a number one. Okay, Josh Rosen is a number one. Regardless of what you feel about Peppers, you don't have to be able to stretch that. And the worst part of the rookie contract for a quarterback, especially, or a top 10 pick, is that beginning part of it. Oh, you're through that, the signing bonus part of it. So I think the price that you're getting him at, I think it's going to take a number one pick. I don't believe it's going to take a number two because there's too many people that need quarterbacks. New England, they need a transition. Josh Rosen would be tremendous for them, just like the Giants are thinking. You think Washington, they're not thinking about that? Like, no, man, there are going to be some teams out there because they know the situation the Cardinals are in. Perfect for Cliff Kingsbury. He can trade for a guy, his first coach, a guy he's very comfortable with, and perfect to build because there's other teams that need a young quarterback.
If the Giants get Rosen, as I've been saying all along, you get Rosen or you get Haskins, we can start believing in the plan. Now, if you have to trade the pick you got, the crown jewel of the Odell trade for Rosen, that is a steep cost, but that would be trading the 17th pick for a guy who just went 10th. The Cardinals were sitting at 15 last year and thought he wasn't going to fall to them, that they had to move up to get him. I believe in Josh Rosen. I think it would have been very difficult for any of the rookie quarterbacks to thrive in Cleveland last year. In Arizona last year. And I think the only one who would have done well, forget thrive, would have been Baker, because Baker is clearly a class above the other quarterback segment. I think Darnold would have looked not too dissimilar from Rosen last year.
I believe Rosen can be a starting quarterback you can build around. I am concerned about the media. I don't know if he's built of the right stuff to be able to survive in New York. Because, man, I mean, he hears a lot. And typically he said a lot. Last year he didn't say a lot, but you know it's in him. I know he's got big ears and stuff he can hear, but hearing what people are saying, I believe, affects people in different ways. I don't know if he has what people are going to be saying about him in New York that he's going to be able to stomach that.
He'd already have a best friend in Nick if he got here.
Well, it's hard for Nick to give up on him. I mean, when you thought he was going to be great.
Well, I don't think we give up on rookie quarterbacks after 1 year.
All right, so that's the media. What about the football aspect of it? I mean, how much different are the Giants set up to protect and to let a guy like Josh Rosen be successful the way the Cardinals really weren't last year?
Well, their offensive line is not great. I mean, they spent a little bit of capital in the last couple. Last year got Nate Solder, got Hernandez, the guard, that he's going to be a good player. Traded for another interior lineman in the Odell Beckham. So, yeah, they're a little better, but, man, their quarterback gets hit an awful lot, too. So
right.
I don't know if that offensive line and the capital they spent is going to be still the type of protection that a quarterback really needs.
But he also wouldn't be the Week 1 starter if they were to trade for him. Eli Manning is going to be the Week 1 starter for the New York Giants. He would have a chance to come to New York wherever he goes, but come to New York, learn under Eli. The media stuff, probably get some pointers from Eli because Eli's dealt with that part of his career perfectly. But the team you mentioned off top, that is, I think, going to be for the Cardinals. If they decide to draft Kyler and Rosen becomes available, I think the starting bid is going to be, can you beat the Patriots at 32? Because if you're New England and you have not invested any resources post-Jimmy Garoppolo into the post-Tom Brady era, a quarterback that's got 3 more super cheap years left on his deal, plus the 5th-year option. So you wouldn't be forcing Brady out the door. You could use that pick. They have the additional second-round picks. I think New England would be in the market for Josh Rosen immediately. So would Washington trade 15? Would the Giants trade 17? Would they try to get some compensation back? It would be a steep price, but if you think he is the guy that most people thought he was coming out of UCLA, then it's a fair price. And for Arizona, all right, so if you spent the 10th pick on him and all of a sudden you're getting the 17th back, then you're getting 85 cents on the dollar. It's not that you're selling super low on Josh Rosen.
The biggest difference is you've already paid the signing bonus. You know you got the fixed cost under the next 3 years.
Right.
But are you concerned about what he saw last year, how much trauma that's going to play out the rest of his career? Because we've seen guys that start like this, they don't recover. So I would just be still concerned about it, even though I think I might be getting it for the dollar value. But I'm concerned about what he saw last year, because the difference between what we know about him now compared to what we were projecting, it's a lot different. Because he was not successful. He was not a force multiplier. He was not a great leader in the NFL locker room. He struggled with pressure. So that part we do know. It's not a guess. Haskins, we're guessing. Kyler, we're guessing. Rosen, I seen some games. I know more than I knew last year.
And his confidence was definitely bruised as well. All right, moving on to the marquee matchup in the NBA last night. Giannis and the Bucks taking on and taking out James Harden and the Rockets. The Bucks defense was the big star last night. Sure, the Greek Freak had 19 points and 14 boards, but the 108-94 win was due in large part to shutting down James Harden. He had just 23 points on 26 shots. Milwaukee now all but locking up the 1 seed in the East. Nick, is it time to consider the Bucks as a real threat to the Warriors and not just, they're the best team in the East?
I think at this point we have to. There's too much of the season gone, and they continue to check every box of what history says it takes to be a real championship contender. They have the number 2 offense in basketball. They have the number 1 defense in basketball. So they're top 2 in both. No one else is top 5 in both. They either have the MVP or the second MVP, like it's going to be a coin flip. Right now, Giannis is probably in the lead. They have an excellent, proven coach. They have depth, and now the depth has been questioned by injury, and that might be the one thing that's knocked them down as of late is the litany of injuries they're dealing with. They're going to win 60-plus games. They have the best record at home of any team in basketball to go along with the best record overall of any team in basketball. And one other thing that I looked at when I was kind of diving into it this morning, they're 49-13 when not playing a back-to-back. So they're 6-5 on the year on a back-to-back, but there are no back-to-backs in the NBA playoffs. So they have the best record in the NBA overall, but when they're not playing a back-to-back, they are on a even greater win pace than the one they're on right now. So they check every box, and what they show...
Except experience.
Except experience. Absolutely right. No, 100%. Now, they made the playoffs last year, but they didn't advance around. The coach brings them the experience, one would hope. But you're right. They don't have the history of we made it the first round, we then made it to the third round, then we made the NBA Finals. But one could argue, you look around the rest of the Eastern Conference, Philly doesn't have any real experience. Toronto's got nothing but bad experience. Boston has experience from last year, but not with Kyrie there. So there's not a team in the East that I would say trumps them greatly in the experience category. NBA history says this is the type of team that contends for a title. And last night, to me, they showed it again.
Yeah, last night was a good example for America to be able to see that's how they play basketball. Now, Coach Bud, he's made a tremendous impact on the team. So not only are they talented, the style for which they're playing, number in the top 5 offensively, top 5 defensively, you're going to be one of the elite teams. How they've done it, style points, you have to be very impressed with the number of games that they've won over 10 points. In the NBA, man, these games are so close. To have that type of margin, the only team we've seen that in recent history was Golden State. So the thing is, to me, the question is not about the East now. Now it's about Golden State. And if Golden State was hitting on all cylinders coming into the playoffs, this wouldn't be a real question. But there are question marks, one being their overall experience. If Pat Riley took over the Miami Heat today, you know something, we'd be like, man, Pat Riley's got a lot of experience, but that experience don't transfer into the players.
Sure.
Because they're not on the court. So there is no experience basically in the East, a greater experience on any team, Philadelphia, Boston, Toronto, than what they have. So they'll be okay. But if they were in the finals, with the Golden State, that will become a problem. I believe they match up with Golden State well. I believe they'll be healthier once they get to that point. They'll be getting a couple of those players coming back. And I believe that two key players, Eric Bledsoe and their center, Brook Lopez, and their ability to be able to put ball pressure with Bledsoe, because that's the difference in last night's game. They had 3/4 pressure on Houston almost the whole game. In the backcourt, they were pressuring them. And then they played up on Harden, the defensive strategy, and they dared them to shoot the intermediate shot. So they took the analytics of Houston. We're going to shoot the 3R layups, and they used it against them. They dared them to shoot the intermediate game, and they weren't able to capitalize on the defensive game plan. But I think they are the real best threat against Golden State because their overall length, their ability to play defense, and how they rely on each other in the overall ball movement, I think is really special.
And if you in this clip we're running, and you can see it in every single highlight, they are on James Harden's left hip. Every single time they're on his left hip.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other NBA teams that are playing on his left hip. But what they're doing is they're forcing him off the three-point line. They're actually playing halfway on the side of him, which no one has had that style.
And so they're funneling him on his hip, and then what they have in all these highlights is 7-footer Brook Lopez, who's not a great defender, but he's long, and Giannis. The way the Bucks play their defense is they put Giannis on the opposing team's worst offensive player, so he can play essentially free safety. And so Giannis will then collapse down on a lot of these plays. It's why they have been the best defense in basketball all year. They forced Harden into floater after floater. Now, you're not going to go up against James Harden. If you play the Warriors, it's a different type of problem you have because there's not one specific guy that you must take out of the equation.
One thing that I love how Coach Bud, though, they played Houston before. They played them again. They only play them 2 times. But they adjusted because they don't have a lot of intel on Harden. But for them to be able to adjust to put in that specific game plan, it looked like a playoff game. It was like, man, 100%. They've been scouting this team for a couple weeks. For them to know their sets and to be able to play the way they did, I thought that you should look at that and been like, wow, that was pretty special how they did that.
Let me just ask you this, because this was such a storyline coming into this game, talking about 2 potential MVP candidates matching up against each other. Chris Paul said after the game, one game does not an MVP make. How do you look at these 2 now coming out of it? Because neither Giannis nor Harden had great games last night.
Well, listen, so CP3, a little history there. The year he came closest to winning the MVP, the year arguably should have, he played Kobe in the final week of the season. Kobe was excellent. The Lakers won. Kobe wins the MVP barely over CP3. So, and I think he feels like that happened to him. Like there was one game at the end of the year that swayed it. Neither guy was great last night. So if neither guy is great, it's about holding serve. Giannis was the favorite, whether he should have been or not. I said I thought it was a coin flip going into last night. In my eyes, it's still a coin flip. But Giannis right now checks so many of the boxes. They're going to win 60 games, top 2 offense, top 2 defense. He might win Defensive Player of the Year. Harden was going to need to do what we said yesterday he might do, which is 40 points, road win, upset him to change the paradigm. I don't think he did enough to change the paradigm.
Truth of the matter, I'm watching the game. Yes, both of these guys deserve the MVP. But the best guy on the court last night was Eric Bledsoe. He's the best player in the game last night. So if they negate each other based on, then neither one of them had a great game, you have to go to the team. What Milwaukee is doing as a team, the number of games they've won, over 10 points, best overall record, best player on the best team. Giannis wins out on last night when neither player were able to send the message because he's on the better basketball team.
And C said it again, 43rd time last night they won a game by double digits. 43 double-digit wins on the season for the Bucks.
All right, you heard it here first. Eric Bledsoe is your MVP this year. That was out of nowhere. Coming up, Sean Payton gets his wish, but is it too little too late? It's ahead on First Things First.
Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there is no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. You can also view stock collections such as 100 most popular, With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of First Things First a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio design. Sign up at first.robinhood.com.
Back here, First Things First. It has been way too long. Look who's back. A very tan Coach Eric Mangini is back with us.
The weather in Cleveland. It's always sunny in Cleveland.
That's
Everybody
why
knows
Odell's
that.
going there.
That's it.
It's because of that weather.
Selling point.
That's what they always say. It's great to have you back.
Thanks.
Coach, like you said, you live in Cleveland, so let's talk about your new neighbor, and it is Odell. The flashy wideout will join Baker Mayfield and college teammate Jarvis Landry to form one of the most interesting and they're hoping most potent offenses in the NFL. The man in charge of figuring it all out is first-year head coach Freddie Kitchens. Wondering how Kitchens will greet Beckham when he first meets him? Let him tell you.
Have you met him yet?
Odell? No, I have not.
What would be the first thing you say to him when you meet him?
I love you. Give him a hug, you know. Like, show me how to catch the ball with one hand. I don't know. Introduce myself and get rolling on getting to know him as a person. You know, that's ultimately that's what we're going to do with the Cleveland Browns is get to know the people and then earn trust. They're going to always trust us. But I've got to trust him too. It's a two-way street, and he's got to trust his teammates, and his teammates have to trust him. It's all about trust.
All right, Coach, talk to us about this new-look Browns team, adding Odell to the mix and Freddie Kitchens to the helm. We haven't really talked to you yet about what your expectations are for the Browns offense.
Yeah, I think the problem with saying "I love you" first is you're always waiting to see whether the person says it back.
Right.
Yeah, so that's one issue, and then I think it's like, don't tell me you love me, show me you love me. Like that's I think a better approach here. This is going to be really interesting to see because you've got a first-year head coach, and he did a great job when he transitioned over, and I underestimated the job that he did, and I give him a lot of credit for that. But now this new hat that he has is radically different than what he was wearing last season. So that's one component of it. You've got a new defensive coordinator, and you can say what you want about Greg, but he did a great job when he was there too.
And the head coaching responsibilities, because I covered them, and him steering the ship, him handling the press conference, him handling a lot of the other things that go with being a head coach that as a coordinator you don't have to worry about. So he did have a great luxury in being the interim, taking over the offense.
Yeah, it was huge for him. Now he goes into this role. You've got a quarterback that is going into his sophomore year, and people have a lot more information about him. They're studying him. They understand him better than when he first started. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do. And now you've got a bunch of personalities in that building that are demanding. And we talked about this with Sean McVay. And I think the difference between Sean McVay and Freddie Kitchens is Sean had won in his first year. He had established some legitimacy before they started bringing in guys that can be challenging, where this is Freddie's first time. So as much as they're printing Super Bowl tickets in Cleveland, as much as they've already decided that this is the team to beat, there's a lot of hurdles they have to overcome before they get in that mix.
As a coach, is this the type of challenge, though, you would want, where you have, because it's such a young team, Cris has talked a lot about how so many of their marquee players are age 26 or younger. You have a lot of them are blue chip prospects because of where they were drafted and where the Browns were able to take them. And they don't have a long experience in the NFL. They don't have a long experience with a bunch of different coaches. You have a chance to really imprint your philosophy, your scheme, your ideals on this team. Now, it might be too much for a guy, and I'm not saying everyone is up for it, but if Freddie Kitchens is up for it, isn't this almost the ideal job where you've got a young quarterback, star players on both sides of the ball, and almost a blank slate as far as here's how we're going to attack the season, because the previous coach they had, Hugh Jackson, had so little success?
There is that, but now the expectations have shifted. So when he took over, there was no expectation. So every single win was a big deal. Now they're going with the height of expectations. This is at a level that hasn't been seen in Cleveland in years and years. So that changes things dramatically. And when you run into problems, which you're gonna as a new head coach, which you're gonna as a young team, the problems are viewed differently externally than if you were going in a little bit more under the radar. In terms of shaping the team, yeah, it's a great opportunity to shape the team. But the locker room, having veterans in the locker room play a big part in shaping a team. And if you don't have the right guys that are reinforcing your message, those young players could learn the wrong way, which could last for a long time as well.
Yeah, of all the 8 situations with new coaches, Freddie Kitchens in the best situation for a number of reasons. Number one, it's about talent. It's about the talent at the quarterback position. I would be really concerned if he didn't have a quarterback. And I'm glad that the intel that he developed last year, the chemistry that him and Baker had last year, to let John Dorsey know that we have the difference maker in Freddie Kitchens in the building. One thing him and Sean McVay, and I know people, they like a coach from an aesthetic standpoint, they don't look the same. But let me tell you what they do have. They have the credibility and the attention because of their football knowledge. That was the thing that I was the most impressed with Freddie Kitchens when I interviewed him last year getting ready for week number 14 against Carolina. He impressed me with what he knew about the game. That's the same with Sean McVay. The reason why he got people's attention, not because of his slicked up hair, not because of the way he talks, because his communication of the game of football. That's what gets guys young guys gets their attention when you can make them better at their job. Now, every coach in the league, they have challenges. Will they hit a rough month? Will they hit? Yes, those are the things that become very, very important. But if I have more talent in the room and I have a quarterback who I believe is going to be one of the better quarterbacks that we have in the NFL, and he's had some success in the NFL, let me start that job compared to some of these other jobs where these guys are taking over.
Coach, what advice would you give Freddie Kitchens right now as he gets ready to start all the offseason and heading into his first full season as head coach?
Well, I think one of the things that I learned is the importance of being yourself. And it seems like he's very comfortable with who he is. He's very comfortable with the situation that he's in. I would also say that he really needs to establish what his philosophy is, what the things that he believes in. Be very clear and open with the players as to what the expectations are, because they may agree with you or disagree with you, but they'll always appreciate the honesty of, hey, this is what I expect. And if you're upfront with them that way, I think that goes a long way.
I wanted to just ask you quickly, how much of your time as a coach, and you learned when you transition from coordinator to head coach from New England to the Jets, is things that we don't think about. Setting the schedule, dealing with the media, having the owner drop in and say, chat with him, like things that Freddie Kitchens has, because he's never been a head coach at any level, has no experience with and won't until this season begins.
And Parcells told me this when I took the job. He said, look, Eric, you're going to have your schedule, but there's going to be 5 things that come up every day that aren't on the schedule, and that eat up huge chunks of time. So as much as you go in and say, okay, this is what I'm going to accomplish today, all these things wash across your desk that you, one, have never dealt with. You don't even know how to address it because it's so different than the realm you were in, and it just eats up huge chunks of time.
All right, Coach, stick around. Got to take a break. Coming up, how hard will it be for the Patriots to get back to the Super Bowl without Gronk? That's next on First Things First. On Sunday, NASCAR heads to Texas Motor Speedway, where Kyle Busch looks to continue his hot start. It all starts Sunday at 3 Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app. Back here with Coach Mangini. We're talking about Gronk. The Patriots officially placed Rob Gronkowski on the NFL retired list, mainly because he retired. This comes after 9 seasons, 3 Super Bowl wins, and one of the greatest careers for a tight end ever. Coach, you've partied with Gronk a lot over the years. We all know that. How will the Patriots replace his production? I thought somebody would take that out of my script, and they didn't. That was obviously
Gronk and I spent a lot of time in Miami Beach together, so I've gotten to know him.
That's where you got this tan, celebrating the retirement.
I didn't know whether to laugh or
together.
Yeah, very similar builds. So.
People can't tell you apart.
How do you? I don't know how they're going to replace Rob, because he does things that typically most teams use 2 tight ends to do. and he has the ability to be an inline blocker. He has the ability to drop back and be part of the pass protection, and then go downfield and be a vertical threat and be a significant threat in the passing game, and be physical down the field as well. And most teams are looking for a guy that's either a blocker or a guy that can catch passes. Very rarely do you find one that can do both. And look, Jason Witten going back after a year in TV, and I'm sure Dallas is happy because he's another guy who had the ability to do both to some degree. So it's going to be hard to replace him, and it's probably going to take a couple guys in the short term to replace what he does.
Well, and when you say a couple guys, that presents a couple problems for the Patriots. Not just you have to find those players, but it also gives you less creativity as far as personnel. Like when Gronk's your best tight end blocker and your best tight end pass catcher, when he's on the field, the defense has no idea. He's not an indicator in any way, shape, or form, as opposed to we brought up
that
obviously
information you talk about all the time, like how much information you get pre-snap.
Right.
And we're trying to give, as an offense, we're trying to give them a limited amount of information. With Gronk, he's the absolute best at that.
And it's similar, I would say, Le'Veon Bell with the Steelers versus James Conner. Le'Veon Bell is on the field. You have no idea if they're running or passing. None whatsoever. The Patriots, we talked about James Devlin as a fullback. If he's on the field, they're running. But even they kind of indicated with their running backs. When Sony Michel was on the field, that is typically a running play. When James White is on the field, it's typically a passing play. And so it gives Brady is so, at this point in his career, what he is maybe the best at of all his skill set is what he does before the snap, looking at the defense, saying, oh, that's your personnel, that's what you're giving me. I can check out of this play or I can go to this option. You have less flexibility without Gronk out there is the way I see it.
Well, I think they're going to go get somebody. And one thing that Bill's done consistently is draft tight ends. And draft tight ends, very different.
He's done well with tight ends.
He's done well, and he's spent draft
Some of the other positions people don't talk about. But tight ends, he knows how to get a tight end. He knows what he's looking for, and he's adapted to how to change in the game and how a tight ends are more prominent part of the NFL now.
And in my first year in New York, when Vernon Davis was available, I really wanted to draft Vernon Davis because I knew what a problem a tight end created for defenses. Because if you can put pressure on the middle of a defense, it opens everything up outside. When you've got a tight end and a slot receiver and you can create the problem with both those players, it's huge. And Bill values that position significantly. So I could see it being not just one tight end that they get in the draft, but maybe they go get a couple tight ends like the year that Gronk was drafted.
Right, they took
him. Yeah, I said that earlier. I think that they'll take two of those top, say, 4, 5, 5 rounds and draft a couple tight ends. Also, they got 3 tight ends in this year's draft. Couple kids from Iowa. They can flat out play. One guy can flat out run. And then Irv Smith at Alabama, he's ranked as one of the top tight ends worthy of a first-round grade. So they will address it. But the overall productivity of who Gronk is as a football player, the productivity, it can't be replaced. You talk about as an end-of-the-line blocker, not just an average end-of-the-line blocker. Pro Football Focus has him last 10 years, every year he's been in the league, he's been a top 10 tight end ranked for them. And a lot of that came initially blocking. Man, where can you get a guy that not only can open up a hole, but right here, Gronk calls this throwing a guy out the club. Remember they had that revenge game in Indianapolis? And he brings that spicy type of attitude. And one thing people don't give Bill Belichick credit for, he wants to play physical football. He realizes to be good at football, you have to be physical. So how do you replace that type of attitude, that type of productivity? And by the way, not only can he throw a guy out the club, he's your number one deep threat that you have. So in understanding pro football, if I can threaten the middle of the defense, man, teams don't like it. But if I can do it from a guy who's only 3 players removed, and he can threaten the middle of the field, we've only seen a few teams be able to do that. So Rob Gronkowski, he is the number one deep threat. And that's another thing that makes him so special, and that part can't be replaced in this draft because there's no tight end in this draft that is a deep threat like him.
The deep threat thing is totally underrated. His yards per catch in his career is higher than Tyreek Hill. Higher than Jerry Rice. Like, he was 15 yards per catch for his career, and I think people don't know that. What people do know is, since he came in the league, he's been the number one red zone threat in all of football. Scored more touchdowns, more catches, more everything in the red zone. That's the other question. Who's the New England Patriots' best red zone receiving option right now. Like that's not where Julian Edelman has historically excelled. They don't have a big red zone option, throw a jump ball to. Like, I don't even know who that guy is for them, because it has been, even in Gronk's down years, it's been Gronk when he's been healthy.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. How much does Gronk leaving affect the rest of the offense, affect Tom Brady, affect what Belichick now has to do with the receiving core, just affect everyone else on offense? Does he have to change his approach this season?
No, I don't think they're going to change their approach. And the one thing that they've dealt with the last few years is the possibility of Gronk leaving. So this isn't the only time that they've talked about contingency plans. Now, they haven't gone and gotten his replacement. And like Cris said, we're not going to find one player that's his replacement. It's probably going to have to be a couple of different guys. But last year there was talk about them moving on from Gronk. There was talk about the trade to Detroit. So at least that has been discussed, and I think Tom will take whoever comes in and be able to adapt them to the offense.
Jenna, I'm with you. I disagree with Coach Mangini as far as that overall productivity and what they do, because their whole scouting is going to change this offseason. They got to go out and they got to target every tight end, every tweener, Now, they thought about Gronk leaving. They thought about trading him, but they didn't actually make the move. When you don't have a deep threat, when you don't have a number one receiver, who they're going to throw the ball, how they're going to distribute their offense, it's going to change. Now, they've had a point of emphasis every year that they don't tell us about, but it will be this year. How do we get back to getting the productivity from that tight end? So it changes how they go about it, how they install stuff, who can they depend on. They know right now they don't have a number one receiver. They don't think Julian Edelman is a number one receiver, and they know he has limitations and is limited to playing in the slot in that short area, using his quickness and his overall ability to be able to catch the ball in traffic. There's problems in New England when Gronk decided to retire.
Coach, stick around. We'll see you in a little bit.
All right.
Coming up.
I do agree with your tan, though.
Did
a little chocolate mocha.
Did Giannis prove he can take down the Warriors in the NBA Finals? That's next on First
Yeah,
Things
your
First.
football analysis of the Patriots, not quite spicy enough.
But yo, Tan.
You're still on vacation.
Welcome back to the show. Former NBA champ Antoine Walker is here. Morning, Twan. I saw Antoine in the hallway, and I'm trying to get better with our guests as far as interpersonal relationships. And I said, "What up, Twan?" And he did a full 360. I go, "But the guys call you Twan. Can we be on a Twan?"
I accepted it. I was shocked.
Yeah, I know you were shocked. I was.
Yesterday, she gave my man
Vincent Goodwill. I was like, "What up,
Yeah,
V?"
you're doing well, Jimmy.
Once we get a handshake, then we'll be good.
Okay.
We're not
Once we
there
get a little
yet.
Give her a
handshake.
little shimmy. You took your little shimmy. Come on, bro.
Something.
They say you ain't got no rhythm, though. That's not me. That's what they told me that.
That's what you told him?
Chris told me that.
We danced once, and I have no rhythm.
Truest thing ever spoken on the television show.
We'll get to the
She
NBA.
learned her dancing from Marnie or one of the
MVP
girls.
Elaine Bennett.
Which one?
In a minute. It's great, Nick. But first, Magic Heat, Derek Jones Jr. knows exactly what to do with the pass. Right over Nikola Vucevic.
I mean, this kid he's the best dunker in the NBA right now. I'm giving him that title. I don't have a list ready for you, but I'm giving him that title. Sorry, Zach LaVine. Aaron Gordon, you got to hold that L as well. He's the best dunker in the NBA.
Based on this season, yes.
Yeah. But great win for the Magic, who right now are the 8th seed.
Flashback, not the way you used to see Miami. You know, you used to shoot them
Wizards,
threes.
Lakers, Lance
Harold Mountain in him, man,
Stevenson
that's
puts
all.
Jeff
You
Green
remember
on
Harold Mountain.
skates as the Lakers bench goes nuts.
Man.
That's dancing now.
Wait.
Whoa.
I don't know what size shoe Lance wears, probably at least a 14, 15, but he steps on Jeff Green's foot. That's what froze him here. Watch the right foot. That's why Jeff couldn't get out of there.
Well, that's an all-time great bench reaction. I mean,
All-time great.
all-time great.
Yeah, for
bench
one of the
reaction.
sorriest basketball teams in the history, you right. Her celebration, you right. You right. Look at them. I mean, they ain't done nothing all year. Look at them.
Oh, yeah. But it's still, I mean, they got 8 men on the court.
That's how the NBA been laughing about y'all all year.
Rockets and Bucks. Chris Paul makes DJ Wilson stumble before knocking down the open three.
The best thing DJ Wilson did is not come back.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the best thing he
Stay
did.
out of the frame.
Get out the-
He went from an on-ball
Maybe they didn't know who it
defender
was.
to a weak side defender in a flash of an eye.
Chris Paul get 2 or 3 of these a year, though. He been getting like 2 or 3 of these a year.
Absolutely. Oh,
More from this one. Clint Capella gets the bounce pass from James Harden before posterizing Giannis.
Now, listen, I know this was not a good game for the Rockets last night. One thing the Rockets should, I think, be optimistic about, if this is the NBA Finals, which it could be, if something happens with Golden State. Capella does present some interesting problems for Giannis. Capella, because of his length and his quickness, he is one of the few players in the league that can match size with Giannis and also keep up with him.
That's a guy who used to live in Houston being optimistic about his boy Daryl Morey and them getting drilled last night. But I like it. I'll look at it. I'll look at it. Okay.
Just give him the game from a slightly different angle. And I'm going to talk about it from this angle.
Sticking with the game here, Milwaukee's defense was the big star last night. Sure, the Greek Freak had 19 points and 14 boards, but the 108-94 Bucks win was due in large part to them shutting down James Harden. Harden had 23 points on 26 shots. So Milwaukee has all but locked up the best record in the NBA this season. Antoine, is it time to consider them as the real threat to the Warriors?
I think they're a threat. When you play against Houston, they have such a different style. I mean, they shot 51 threes last night. A lot of teams are not going to do that. They don't share the basketball. They're ball dominant by one person. Milwaukee's played them really, really well. They've got two guards that can stay in front of James Harden, Eric Bledsoe, and George Hill. And then you got two bigs that kind of challenge, James Harden at the rim with Giannis, and obviously Brook Lopez they both challenge James Harden at the rim. So it's a different style. I don't want to take anything away from the win. They beat a great team in Houston. Houston's playing great basketball right now. It's always good to get these type of wins to know where you're at, just in case you do get in the finals. You got some film, kind of can see some matchups, but I don't take much from them because Golden State's a different animal when it comes to matchups where Milwaukee will have to face.
So it's not shocking to me that the Rockets shot 50-plus threes, not only because they're the Rockets, but Milwaukee, if people have been watching them all year, they allow more threes than any team in the league. And somehow they still have the #1 defense in basketball. It's because they basically say, even in this three-point shooting NBA, we're going to give up those threes, and you're going to get nothing on the inside. We've got two legit 7-footers. Giannis, 6'11", but with a 7'6" wingspan. They have Giannis on the other team's worst offensive player, and they let him play free safety. And that's why, to me, they are interesting against the Warriors.
Yeah, to me, too. Look at what the Warriors faced the last 4 years. Now, I know they had a lot of injuries with LeBron, and they did have LeBron. But if we were being honest, based on how the season has went, how they've played, their coaching changes, how they're playing defense, we could say this is probably the biggest threat to the Warriors outside of Houston when Chris Paul got hurt.
Oh, you mean that? So who the Warriors faced in the finals over the last 4 years?
Well, that's what we talked about.
Right, no, of course, especially when you consider what type of profile the Cavs had defensively and what this Bucks team has defensively. Because the point I was making about Giannis is Giannis will be guarding Draymond. And you might say, wait, why wouldn't he guard Kevin Durant? No. They will have him guard Draymond, which means he won't guard Draymond, and he will just patrol the baseline waiting for someone to create penetration. So they'll be able to stay up on three-point shooters, and if Steph or KD gets by someone, Giannis will come flying at him. If there wasn't such a belief, Twan, that the Warriors had another gear to get to, that they are just basically hovering in third, occasionally getting to fourth, but haven't touched fifth gear yet all year, then I think people would say, of course the Bucks can beat them. #2 offense, #1 defense, maybe the best player in the league, a very good coach, a deep team. They check all the boxes.
I think it's 3 teams in the East that can give them a chance, and I think the Bucks is the third team.
Oh, wow.
I still like Toronto. I still like Philly. If you get into a 7-game series, I think you got to think about one with Toronto. With the addition of obviously Marc Gasol to their team, makes now he can pick and pop with Boogie Cousins. He can guard Boogie by himself. He don't have to double. That's an added piece of that. You got to think about too as well. They added Jeremy Lin, another guard that makes Steph Curry have to work. Jeremy Lin's not that bad. Now you got 3 guards that you can throw at Steph. They've got more personnel, and then obviously you look at Philly. Philly's starting 5 could be obviously I believe they're the best in the league, and they pose difference. That's when Jimmy Butler comes into play and Tobias Harris. When you get into a series, it becomes different. They didn't have nobody that can guard Joel Embiid. He gives Cousins fits.
You think Philly's starting 5 is better than the Warriors starting 5?
That's tough. No. I'm not going to disrespect.
So best starting 5 in the East is what you're saying.
Yes.
I got you.
But I just think those 3 teams all give Golden State, compared to what we saw in the past, the last 4 years, obviously LeBron got 1, and they got dominated the last 2 years. Those 3 teams can give a better finals run.
What doesn't this Milwaukee team have besides experience that you don't fully trust can go up against the Warriors?
I think it's experience. I think when you get in the playoffs, you get in a 7-game series, I think it becomes tough. I'm not completely sold on Chris Middleton. I know he made the All-Star team. I'm not really sold. I got a question mark on Eric Bledsoe. We got to see him in his big stage. He's had a great season.
He's playing the best basketball of his career.
He is, but we haven't seen him in this stage. You're talking about when you get to that, obviously, when you get to the Eastern Conference Finals, you're going to end up playing either the Toronto Raptors or the Philadelphia 76ers. And I like their experience and their depth a little bit better than I like Milwaukee's.
Tell me if I'm wrong here. You also, I think we've talked about this before, have questions about how effective, even as dominant as Giannis has been this year, in a playoff series where you're scouting this team and this team only, where you play them every couple of days, and Giannis does still have, he's been able to overcome it as far as being wildly effective this year, one enormous limitation to his game, which is he cannot shoot threes. He's at like 23% on the year from three-point range. Some concern about how he will be guarded in a postseason series and how effective he will be late in postseason games. Is that one of your concerns?
Yeah, I just think people don't understand when the playoffs come, it gets a little tougher, a little harder. We see a lot of dunks, a lot of individual one-on-one plays that Giannis makes. It won't be as easy come playoff time.
No, it won't be as easy, but I think because Giannis hit this growth spurt, but Giannis grew up as a point guard. So now you got a guy 6'11", 7 foot. He's got more unassisted dunks than anyone, I guess, the last 10 years in the NBA. So that works in the playoffs. I can go off the dribble because anytime I get beyond the three-point line, even if they lay off of me, because he's so gangly and because it's awkward and it's never been seen before. He's built like Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant not trying to go all the way to the hole the way we've seen Giannis. I've been shocked of how he's been able to improve his dribbling and how he has relied on that to be able to get not only to the rim, but I'm talking about finishing with a dunk, with the Shaq-type numbers.
And when you say built like Kevin Durant, the Kevin Durant body type, but with, I'd say, 25 extra pounds, 30 extra pounds of muscle, so he can deal with the contact at the rim.
Guys, if you have to tell me who you could trust on Milwaukee besides Giannis, I mean, you guys, other teams, we naming 2, 3 different players. Give me somebody else on Milwaukee that you can trust.
I don't know who I can trust on Toronto besides Kawhi. I don't know that I can trust. Like
Marcus Gasol's been there.
Okay, Marc Gasol's been there at a different time of his career.
Serge Ibaka's been to the finals. He knows how it fits. Kyle Lowry's been in tight playoff games against Cleveland the last 3 years.
The only thing I'm worried about with Milwaukee is Brogdon and their depth. If they don't get those guys back being 100%, but if they get both of those players back and healthy, they are the class of the East, and they're the best matchup in the Warriors. In this 5-year period, they're the best matchup going against the Warriors in a 7-game series.
Antoine, did last night's game change your opinion at all of who the MVP was going to be? After the game, Chris Paul said, hey, this game shouldn't determine who the MVP is. Both Giannis and Harden did not have, obviously, their best games. The race is still down to those two.
I don't base it off that. I think Giannis deserves the MVP. If we go into the history of the NBA and how they pick MVPs, they're going to win 60-plus games. He's been dominant all season long. He's played predominantly 90% of the games. Then you think about it, on the defensive end, he's probably the best defensive player in the league besides Kawhi Leonard. You got to add that to the equation as well. And he's checking all the boxes right now to be the MVP. And that's not taking anything away from James Harden. But the thing about James Harden,
for the MVP
you know, no, I'm not taking anything away from what he's done this season. I understand the scoring and how it's been amazing and how he's carried that team. But you got to reward Giannis when you think about 65 wins and they kind of pieced that team together. We've seen Harden do this before, not at the level of 36 a night, but we've seen him dominate like
and
this.
If Giannis and them didn't have all those plus 10-point wins, he'd be averaging 30 points a game because he's sitting a lot of times in the fourth quarter too.
That is, there's two ways to look at that. One is the Rockets. They haven't been blowing people out the way the Bucks have. They have needed every single one of Harden's points. But the other way to look at it is exactly what Chris said, which is the Bucks have 43 double-digit wins this year. 43 double-digit wins. So how much is Giannis's stats being impacted by we're up 16 with 5 minutes left, so he's not getting an extra 2 or 3 points per game?
All right. Antoine, we'll see you later on the show.
That.
Coming up, the Cowboys are at an impasse with one of their biggest stars. That's ahead on First Things First. Back here, First Things First, we're going viral. Last night, the Clippers beat the T-Wolves to clinch a playoff berth. They are an NBA best 13-3 since the All-Star break. Here's what Doc Rivers had to say to his team after the game.
Hey, ESPN predictor. Right. 33 wins. That's what they said. Charles Barkley, 33 wins. Vegas, 33 wins. And we going to the damn playoffs. Yes, sir. 2, 3, family.
Can you guys just imagine if they won 34 games? What that locker room would have looked like?
See, gun to your head. Doc or Bud, Coach of the Year. You got to make a pick.
It's very
Bud
violent
in Milwaukee,
with the gun to the head.
Doc with the Clippers.
Doc's a phenomenal story and what he's done with the lack of talent, but Bud taking over Milwaukee, the difference between this year and last year, Giannis's overall development, how they play offense, how they play defense. Man, you got to go with Bud. I mean, just use another reference. You don't have to put a gun to it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't even get through the question. I was so stressed about the gun.
Don't play.
My apologies.
Yeah,
My apologies. I should have used a less violent reference.
You've
got to make a choice.
You're such a hood guy.
Such a hoodlum. All right. Yeah.
Gun to your head.
All right. Well, all right.
Mr. Tickles, gun to your head. Would you like your job?
My apologies.
Stories to start your morning, brought to you by the unexpected energy of ExxonMobil. According to reports, the Giants will explore a trade for quarterback Josh Rosen. Rosen could be the odd man out in Arizona, with speculation the Cardinals will draft Kyler Murray with their first overall pick. Would this be a good move for the New York Giants?
Yes. Well, depending on what pick they have to trade for him. Because there's other people now. I don't believe the asking price is going to be as low as people had thought. Because I believe New England is looking at Josh Rosen. I believe that Washington is looking at Josh Rosen. Also the Giants, and wouldn't be surprised, too, don't listen to John Gruden, the Raiders might be looking at it. Because his fixed cost for the next 3 years, his overall experience of now, man, I can take a chance on him. So I believe that it's going to take a lot for the Giants to be able to get him, but it's a good move.
So we both agree it would be a total home run if they were to get him for the 37th pick, correct? That if
that's not going to happen.
But you just think with New England sitting there having the 32nd pick, that would potentially be available, and Washington could potentially offer their first-round pick, that the Giants would have to maybe offer the pick they traded for Odell. If you do that, then it's not we're taking a flyer on a guy. Then it's we are committing to Josh Rosen as our quarterback after Eli Manning. I still believe in Josh Rosen. We have seen in very recent NFL history a quarterback have a worse rookie year than Josh Rosen's, Jared Goff's, and he came back the next year and was excellent. Now, he had a lot more
help.
Now,
you think Kingsbury is going to be
McVay? I don't, and I also don't think he's going to have the weapons.
Yeah, I think they use the same thing on their hair.
That's about it. That's the only similarity.
You mentioned the Raiders. John Gruden finally admitted how difficult the Khalil Mack trade was for him. He said he, quote, cried for 3 days after the deal. Nick, what's your reaction to this?
I believe it. I think he cried the Monday after he saw Khalil Mack play the Packers. Then I think he cried the following Monday when he saw Khalil Mack have another strip sack. And the following Monday, when reportedly on his way to his press conference, he said to someone, and this is true, wait, he had another strip sack? I think those were the 3 days he cried. Not the days after the trade, but the 3 days he had to hear about what Khalil Mack did playing for the Chicago Bears.
I don't believe a lot of the stuff that's coming out of Oakland and everything. That John Gruden has said some things. I think America's getting a full picture of who I believe John Gruden to be, the real John Gruden. And to me, I mean, why'd you stop crying? You should still be crying, bro. What are you looking for in this year's draft? A rush in?
Pass rusher.
Okay. Did you have to trade for another wide receiver? Why did he stop? That would have been my next question. Why did you stop crying?
Listen, when you can make Khalil Mack the highest paid defensive player in the league or make Trent Brown the highest paid offensive lineman in the league history, obviously it's clear what choice you have to make.
Let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys before one of us starts crying. Among the many players they need and want to sign to a long-term deal, stud defensive end DeMarcus Lawrence. Stephen Jones says the Cowboys and Lawrence are at an impasse with regards to negotiations, but Jerry Jones says that a deal is in the works.
Of course he does.
Mixed messages aside, how important is Lawrence to the Cowboys' success?
He's vital. Typically, when you are going to franchise, especially a defensive end, not the other positions, when you're trying to franchise a defensive end, when he's in the number of years and he has the age that he does not have on him, you're franchising him to give him a long-term deal. So now this is the second time. It's not as if they're worried about the guaranteed money. The market for defensive ends is not set and everything. A player of his caliber. This is not the L. Bell in Pittsburgh story, where he was like, L. Bell was telling him, man, I want wide receiver type money. I don't want wide receiver running back money because the market was not there for that. So they're not in that situation. They have no choice. They got 2 other guys that were in their defensive meeting room last year, both of them suspended, and I would not expect, based on the latest information, expect seeing them playing football anytime soon. So in doing that, there's more pressure on Dallas to be able to get this deal done with DeMarcus. He's one of the elite pass rushers. That defense is not going anywhere without it, and he's proven himself. He deserves the contract.
Last year's franchise tag, I do not believe was a placeholder. Last year's, I think, was, prove it to us one more time. Let us see it. Like similar with what I think the Texans are doing with Jadeveon Clowney. Show us a year of full health and production. We'll give you the long-term deal.
And sometimes I believe that the NFL, is doing this thing where they try to see if the player's going to panic. So it's not a placeholder. We're going to put it here.
Panic and take a bad deal.
Yes.
Take a deal that's where it's like, wait, you're going to make me, you're no guarantees. Oh, okay, I'll take your deal.
Oh, okay.
And this year, I think they put the franchise tag on him, hoping to get a deal done, to your point, knowing they have to. Like, who else are they going to rely on? Taco Charlton? Tyrone Crawford, who, by the way, makes a lot of money, and I know he's more of a D tackle, but he can split out on D occasionally. They have to have this player. But that's why he can hold their feet to the fire. He's not trying to reset the market, but he is trying to get top of the market money. And the Cowboys are like, is he the 9th best pass rusher? And he wants to be paid like he's the 2nd best passer. Can we do it? But here's the other element that puts the Cowboys in a really rough spot and even more leverage for DeMarcus Lawrence. Even if they make him one of the highest paid defensive players ever, that will save them cap space this year because of the way you can format that. You can defer money as opposed to franchise tag. It all hits you right now, $22 million. And they need the money this year because they need to give extensions to everybody, it would seem. Amari Cooper, potentially Zeke. We know Dak. I think Byron Jones should be a huge priority unless they want to go through the same dance that they went through with DeMarcus Lawrence with Byron Jones next year with the franchise tag. So all the leverage was already in DeMarcus's camp. And then Randy Gregory and David Irving all get suspended or get essentially banished from the league for at least a year. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to get a ton of money and because he knows they desperately need him, and he knows they're in a bad spot franchising him for the 2nd straight year.
And as Jerry, he hasn't learned in all these years, why is he telling people this?
Talking.
Don't talk.
Like why? When you do that, you give the player and his agent a huge advantage in knowing that Jerry's going to get involved. And Jerry's got to get a deal done because Jerry is pressed to try to win him a Super Bowl before his time expires.
I didn't know how you were going to say that.
Yeah. Right, that's his own words. That's not Chris
take
Carter
a break.
putting an
Coming up,
expert.
the NFL made pass interference reviewable. That's next on First Things First. Back here with Coach Mangini, NFL owners coach approved a new rule that would make both offensive and defensive pass interference reviewable. Coaches will be able to challenge calls and missed calls. The impetus for the change came after the missed pass interference call in the Saints-Rams NFC title game last year. If you're worried it'll make the games longer, do not. It is only a one-year proposal. Coach, what was your reaction to the new rule?
I thought it was a good decision, and I have no problem with them making any aspect of the game challengeable. I think you give the coaches their 2 challenges, and they should be able to use it for whatever they see fit. And to me, this is overdue, and it's not an indictment on the officials. There's a human component to it, but if that human component is affecting the outcome of the game and the coach has a challenge, he should be able to use it to get to what we all want, which is a game that's fairly played, with everybody having the opportunity to win and not lose because of human error.
Well, I guess it depends on what you define as fairly played, in that obviously this is an egregious missed call. Everyone knows that. It is not the norm for a playoff game or a regular season game or a preseason game to have a call of this magnitude missed that blatantly. But I feel like, especially on pass interference, there has always been a bit of a gray area. And the way the referees call the game early sets a tone. And it's, okay, this is what will be allowed, this is what will not be allowed, correct? And it's up to the players early on to adjust. That's particularly for illegal contact, but it's also for pass interference. And now, when a non-call is challenged or when a call is challenged, all of this is how we've been officiating the game throughout the game goes out the window, and it becomes, what does the letter of the law state? I thought the Super Bowl was very well officiated. They used in the meeting yesterday this play as an example. That's pass interference. Nobody watching this game thought, oh, my God, they missed this call. That was a great defensive play, especially given how the game had been officiated. That would have set the very next play. The Rams threw a pick, by the way. That would have been a game-changing decision. I don't think this makes the game better. I think it makes the game more, wait, is this a touchdown? Is it not? Is this going to be a completion? Is it not? And that doesn't even speak to, I don't know what they're going to do with Hail Marys at the end of the game, or at the end of the half, which have always seemed to be played by a different set of rules.
Well, if you're a Rams fan, would you have wanted that rule in place last year? I mean, I think where you stand depends on where you sit and what perspective you have. The Rams have anybody who's from L.A. is thinking, we wish we had this rule in place at that point. And you've got the New Orleans group who wishes they had that rule in place. You have Pittsburgh, who suffered from a pass interference that was called that ended up against the Saints that ended up knocking them out of the playoffs. So why do all those teams have to go home for something that is controllable, where the whole world can see that this was an issue, but nobody has the ability to fix a problem that affected 3 teams in 3 of the biggest games of the season?
I like the fact that they were open-minded enough. I got a lot of respect for the coaching committee, led by Sean Payton. He was involved, but Bill Belichick's on there, Andy Reid's on there, Jason Garrett's on there. So you have the best coaches that believe that this is better for the game. So this is not league-wide. This is not fan-driven. The coaches that are trying to do their job, trying to teach football, they believe. So that, to me, that won me over. Because I have to be for a person trying to, forget about how the people are going to react, because every rule change there is, and based on the one you're talking about with the Super Bowl call, every rule change, when they send you the video, there's 2 or 3 plays in there, you don't know what the call is, and you're not happy with it. I know from all the videos, all the meetings I've been involved with the NFL, when they were trying to change rules, we used to do catch, no catch. As soon as you see it, you had to say it. And I was like, catch. I didn't know. And there was a few that I was like, Roger, I don't agree with that. But that's why you have the video to be able to show these examples, but it gives coaches the opportunity. And I do think it's easy to teach the Hail Mary. It's easy to teach because the point of emphasis is, guys, listen, the eye in the sky's watching. All right? You can't grab a guy. That's the only time they do it. So it's easy to implement that to NFL players the same way they did the targeting and other rule implications.
And look, I got hit on a Hail Mary in Detroit. We were playing them. They threw it up. They called pass interference on us, and it was the same official that had called it 3 years earlier. It was the only guy who had called it over the course of 5 years, and it was the same official. Now, would I like that all to be officiated the same way? Yeah, that changed a game for us, and they ended up beating us because they got the ball on the 1-yard line, and it changed things dramatically. Would I want things to be equal in that situation? Yeah, and this gives it a chance to
But
be
one of the
equal.
big differences in the NBA and the NFL is NFL got referees at practice. So you're able to practice these things over. And we talk about Belichick, the best at situational football. All these situations you teach. The Hail Mary, you have the referees there. They're able to explain it. But the one thing is the players know that it's there. And when you do that, when the players know that you will be penalized for it, players adjust to it.
And we had the former head of officials who helped us out and actually worked in the booth in Cleveland. And there were times during the game where I'd say, what do you think? And he didn't know. He didn't know. So you're going to have a conviction when you throw the flag on any penalty situation, which means it's probably leaning towards the side of being very obvious.
Coach, now just because you said that, now Nick is going to be trying to add one of his guys off his geek squad.
I think Coach would do it.
He wants to add one of the guys off his geek squad to be in the booth, to be able to add to your staff, Coach, that be able to help you with these types of plays. I told him I would trust the coaching staff.
What would you do? Because I think you would hire someone whose job it is.
Don't be easily influenced.
Well, no. This is what I did do.
Peer pressure.
No, listen.
I hired the guy. So the head of officiating, he was the head of replay. He retired, and I hired him thinking, how could I be better than this guy? But that's the great thing.
Coach,
about
how'd
this.
that work for y'all?
Not great.
There we go. Now, there you go, wise guy. I'm so smart. Watch this. Nick was like, yeah, look,
I knew that. I knew that.
You think it would be money, right?
Matter of fact, when they came in with the broom, they swept them all out the door. All y'all got to go.
I used to say, what do you think? What do you think? It'd be, and
Okay,
in his normal job, he's not under that type of pressure.
Look, real quick,
it's
hold
not
on.
that easy.
Just because, Coach, you mentioned something earlier that I think, hold on one second, that Jenna brought up that I think is interesting. You brought
integrity.
up the slippery slope argument.
Oh, right.
Which is this going to lead to what Coach said off the very top, which is, well, then why can't we just use these challenges for anything? That's something you would like?
Yeah, why not? What's wrong
Holding
with doing
calls, anything?
If you feel like you've got those two challenges, if you feel like that impacts the game enough, why wouldn't you be able to throw the flag?
About to have constitutional lawyers on the sidelines.
No, you don't. You still have two opportunities, and guys are going to blow it.
More smart people who don't want to play.
No, I
don't
don't want that. I don't want any of this. I don't want any. I come from a place of I don't want any amount of.
This is the thing that they should do. Give yourself a small sample size. All right? See if it works, and then try to move it, just like interior blocking, crackback blocking. Now you can't crack back on anyone, but it started in certain areas of the field. You can do interior offensive lineman. All right, I want that challenge for inside the box, inside that tackle box. If I feel like someone was grabbed, defensive holding, or like either way, like I believe this is the way that you're able to get. Let's get some wins in the pass interference category, and then if that's successful, let's see if it can be expanded.
All right, Coach, we'll see you back here tomorrow?
Yes.
Perfect. Take a break. Coming up, a prominent coach says Zion Williamson is going to be a Hall of Famer. That is next on First Things First. FS1 is your destination for the day's best sports shows. Tune in for the biggest personalities on the biggest stories. We get you started right here with First Things First. You can catch it on Monday through Friday only on
FS1.
FS1 would be the name of it. Back here with Antoine Walker, we're talking Zion. The freshman phenom had an incredible game Sunday, scored 32, grabbed 11 boards in Duke's very, very, very close win over UCF. UCF head coach and former Duke star Johnny Dawkins had some high praise for Zion, saying he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Antoine, can Zion be an instant NBA star? Why are you laughing? Because we've anointed him already?
I don't think you could throw that word around too loosely, Hall of Famer.
The Hall of Famer is the first level of Zion praise that I have to get
How
off
about
the
let's
boat
get the
on.
All-Star first?
Okay. Well, so how? So
we know he's going to get drafted, so that's not a problem. Let's get the All-Star first.
How long do you think, it's Jenna's question, how long until he becomes, in your eyes, an all-star caliber player in this league? Like, how much of an instant impact as a rookie can he have?
It's going to be very difficult for him because I look at the top teams that he could possibly go to. When you look at the Knicks, they got their Knicks, are they going to wait to rebuild and say we're going to build around Zion if we get the one pick when they made this cap space to be able to sign two top big-time free agents? You look at Cleveland, maybe Cleveland may be a situation where they can build around him, and the Chicago Bulls. I think the Phoenix Suns got their star already, and Devin Booker. So I don't think you're going to change it up too much because you already got Devin Booker. The thing with Zion is that he needs to play with a great point guard. None of those teams up front have a good point guard right now. With his athletic ability, I know he can dribble and handle, but he's going to have to play with a great point guard that's going to be able to spoon-feed him, get him out on the break, get him out and use his athletic ability. It's going to take a while for him to get a jump shot. We know he struggles a little bit to make the college three. He does make a few, but when you're talking about making NBA threes, and he's kind of a positionless player. I mean, what position he's going to guard at the next level? I don't know if he's going to guard fours, he's going to guard threes. It's going to be a learning curve for him. I don't know if he can play at 285 in the league.
Why couldn't he?
Because it depends on where he guards at. It depends on where he guards at. It's a difference. 82 games. It's totally different. I think you got to look at the position and do you want to guard LeBron James or do you want to guard Draymond Green?
Well, so the one thing I'd say for Zion is I don't think he has any reason that I can tell to change his body. It's not slowing him down. It's not hurting his explosiveness. Now, if you want to argue he's more...
That's not a reason.
Well, it's...
And when you have an unusual body, if he was 155 pounds, what would we be saying?
Well, of course, we would say he's going to get pushed around.
So now we have a guy that we've never seen someone at that weight, and we know the wear and tear. Both of us know from playing that there is an ideal weight, and young players don't know that. So if we approached him, been like, you don't know what you don't know, but getting in the best shape of your life. If he got into the best shape of his life, this is what I'm going to say. He don't have to lose weight. But I'm going to get you into some Pat Riley shape. Now, what weight are you going to be at if I get you into Pat Riley shape?
And the point that I was leading to is if someone can show him or show me that he is going to be less likely to be injured, or he's going to be more likely to be able to sustain the 82 games if he does either lose some weight.
I'll put him on a body fat test, and immediately it would tell him.
Sure. And so in that case, then I think there's a reason to adjust accordingly. But we have rookies, not every year, but most years, that come in and they're instantly really good NBA players. This year we have 2 really good NBA players as rookies, and DeAndre Ayton's close. Luke is outstanding. Now, he might be a different category because he played professionally since he was 15 years old. But Trae Young doesn't have anything close to an NBA body yet, and his skill set has made him an above-average NBA point guard right now. Why can't Zion come into the league?
It depends what team drafts him and what the fit. It's about the fit, and I believe it's about the coach. I like him. If the Knicks get the 1 pick, I like him. I think David Fizdale, he's coached LeBron James. He's been assistant coach with Dwayne Wade. So he's been around stars. He knows what it takes in the everyday grind to get better. If he gets to a situation where they're rebuilding, the Chicago Bulls don't have a coach right now, really.
Right.
You get to that situation, you can get lost in those shuffles. So we may have to wait. Which organization is going to wait? He's definitely going to sell seats. He's going to be must-see TV. People are going to want to see him play because of his athletic ability and his ability to dominate a game. But it's going to be different to say he's going to be, people put out there Hall of Fame. Let's get to the league first. Let's be an all-star first. And once he's accomplished that and let's establish himself on the team, then you can start thinking about down the line how good he can be.
Yeah, I think that the 2 rookies you talk about, I think that their size and everything, let's go with Trae first. He's in a league now that you can have movement, freedom of movement. They changed the rules. And his dribbling skills. But if they hadn't changed the rules, he would have struggled more.
Sure.
Luka is a freak. He can shoot the ball, he can dribble the ball, and he's 6'7".
Right.
I mean, so as a point guard, yes, the size always matters. Now, he's playing in the era where he's able to be helped by the rules. Zion doesn't know that playing in 82 games, the amount of energy that he's going to have to exert. So there's so many things that I believe he is going to be a star because he plays defense well. He's a good help defender. He's got a long way to come. He's not a post defender. Like, right. I don't see him playing good post defense.
That's what I say. You don't know what position he's going to play or what he's going to be.
Yeah, but the point you say as far as him having a point guard, especially when someone that can get him the ball offensively in the spot where he wants to be able to get the ball, a coaching staff that's going to allow him to get up and down. Realize that, I need to allow him to get up and down before the defense sets itself against him.
And you said about Trae Young, they traded for Trae Young, and they built the offense that they said Atlanta was like, we're going to start shooting threes.
Yep.
This is the style we want to play. They did that. Now, are these organizations going to do that for Zion?
Yes.
You believe that?
Yes, I think you get Zion.
You think the Knicks take Zion?
Hold on. The Knicks are the one team that I would say could trade the pick because the Knicks think they're getting Kevin Durant and somebody. Okay. So set the Knicks aside almost because they're not the typical team that's in the lottery.
What if the Bulls get him?
Then he's their best player and they build around him. If the Suns get him, he will be a better NBA player than Devin Booker. Devin Booker is supposed to be a number 2 in this league, not a number 1.
I don't know. When you score 50 in the NBA. It's hard to say what he's going to be.
I understand. Listen, Devin Booker.
Well, I'm sorry, 70.
He scored 70 previously, and he scored 50 in the 30-point loss the other night. Of course. But what Zion will have, and this is the part that so take Trae and Luke outside of it. He can have the impact Blake Griffin did as a rookie. Blake Griffin also hadn't played 80-some games. All these college guys have to deal with that part of it. And Blake, now he had a redshirt year, so if we want to give him inflated stats because of that, that's fine. But his first year in the NBA, he averaged 23 and 12.
I love that comparison. But Blake Griffin's best years were with what point guard?
Eventually, he was with Chris Paul, but he didn't need Chris
Paul
immediately.
I know. I just said he needs a point guard with him eventually.
Every era I've watched the NBA, if you can get above the rim and you can dunk, you can highlight with Julius Erving into Michael Jordan and others, you're always going to be a star. So no matter where he goes, he's going to be able to dunk the basketball. So he's going to have young fans, middle-aged fans, old fans liking him because that is a style that makes people stars and has been for years and years and years.
To the point guard point, the ideal spot for him is Atlanta. Because they have their point guard in Trae. Trae creates some of the spacing. They play fast. That's the best spot for him. But I think he's a star anywhere he goes.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.